Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, we're going to have a little pro-con on what else but school choice, this never-ending attempt to establish vouchers in the state, and then Gene Barr from the Pennsylvania Chamber is in the House. There are a couple of breaking developments that is a big concern to the business community. Pennsylvania politics and government, in depth and in detail, and guess what? It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, we're going to have a little counterpoint. I would say fair and balanced, but I think another network has acquired fair and balanced. How about two very bright guys that have a differing position on one of the big issues of the day? Joining me is Joe Bard. He's the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Association of Rural and Small Schools, and Otto Banks. He's the Executive Director of the REACH Alliance. Is it an alliance? Is that right?
It's a alliance and foundation.
Well, we got to get that in.
Yes,
and foundation. All right, guys, thanks for coming in. All right, here's what I want to start with. I'll start with you, Otto, because you want the legislature to do something, and then I'll go to Joe. I want you to give me 2 or 3 reasons why school choice, giving the parents, if you will, in a sense, tuition money or money to go to either a private or a public school outside of their own district. It's been debated in this state for at least 20 years. Joe Bard used to work in the Department of Education. He'll correct me, I'm sure, on that. All right, give me a couple of reasons why.
Well, first and foremost, of course, we believe in terms of what school choice actually is. School choice is empowering parents, giving them the opportunity to send their child to the school that best meets and fits their individual needs. One of the reasons that we believe that school choice is essential, because here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you're relegated to a school simply based on your zip code. So we found that many children that come from lower socioeconomic stratifications are essentially forced to attend a failing school within their district. So that's first and foremost. We believe that a quality education is the cornerstone of not only our community but our society, which is essential for a person to be successful. Second reason is because Pennsylvania spends at least $27 billion a year on public education. As a taxpayer, many of us have not received a return on our investment. This discussion is not about public versus private. It's about equity. It's about ensuring that you, and this gentleman here as well as myself, get a return on our investment to ensure that our money is being spent wisely. You know, Philadelphia alone, City of Philadelphia has a $3 billion annual operating budget for the public school system. Just a quarter of that will bail out the city of Harrisburg from its current fiscal
We'll get Linda Thompson on the phone. Let her. All right, Joe, what's the problem you have with it?
In 3 words, cost, because it is an additional cost and nobody's adding money to the
school district
basic ed appropriation, whatever it costs, and the higher tag would be in the out years, at least in the legislation we've seen proposed so far. Second, accountability. If public money is being spent in private or non-public schools, there should be, I feel must be, the same accountability as there is for public schools. And
let me interrupt you. In the current proposal, there would be no accountability in the way that you would like to see. Is that the point?
Yeah, there's no legislation currently before the General Assembly, but in the last that was, there is not sufficient in any way for the amount of public money that would be spent. My third word, constitutionality. By my reckoning and those that I work with on this issue, we figure there are 3 direct violations of Article 3 of the Constitution in that legislation.
Okay, all right. Let's sort of go through these and Otto, one of the that Joe has brought up, and I've heard it before, is this accountability issue that give money to the parents and they'll take it, and if they're in a, do you think there is sufficient accountability in the system now?
Absolutely. If he's referring to Senate Bill 1, which passed by majority in the Senate and it should be under consideration in the House, there was language in there that would require private schools that would receive a voucher student to submit to a nationally normed test. For example, you know, public schools use the PSSA.
Right.
PSSA is one of the tests that the private schools could utilize, but there's also other tests.
Yeah.
There, you know, there's California, there's Iowa, there's.
So you're
you know,
suggesting that there could be built into the system a series of tests for people who are on vouchers that would what? If they don't do well in the test, the money gets cut off?
No, absolutely not. If we actually went along that line in terms of logic, we could look at our failing public schools. Out of the 143 that have been identified, we don't close those schools down because those children aren't doing well.
Joe,
you know, what happens is the money will follow the child.
Okay.
So what happens, if the child is not performing well in that school, the parent could then pick and choose another school.
Joe, one of the points that keeps coming up also is the fact that given the dearth of money, the cut that took place in basic ed last year, we got to see what happens in the budget that the address the governor will deliver, I guess, on Tuesday. What's your concern about the fiscal side of it? Is that money ought to be going to school districts or taking it away, leaving the school districts with less money? Is that one of the more serious problems?
I believe in properly funded public schools, which we do not have. We rank toward the bottom in terms of funding level of our public schools in the country, and until we have adequately funded those, I can't even really countenance a discussion of how we would properly fund private and non-public schools. And I don't believe that I'm alone in that. I do not think we are going to see vouchers anytime in the near future as long as this state is in the financial condition it is in.
Yeah, I want to get to that. We're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the bill that they're considering in the House that is a very scaled-down version that we'll get into. We're going to run to a break, and we'll continue our discussion about school choice after we pay some bills talking about money.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by ReconnectPA.org, supporting a comprehensive transportation funding solution, and by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program with Joe Barr and Otto Banks. We're discussing vouchers. They have different views on it. Otto, let's start with this. Currently, there's a new proposal in the legislature that would limit the number of folks who would be eligible for vouchers, and then actually require the legislature, it'd be almost like a pilot program, to re-up it, you know, to say yes or no, we're going to keep it in a few years. Is that acceptable to you?
Absolutely. I believe that any time we can help a child that's stuck in a failing school, that needs an opportunity, we should. I mean, if we can extend a lifeline, we should. When you look at the cost of the particular program itself, it's somewhat minimal when you look at the overall educational spending. You know, in the city of Harrisburg, per pupil spending is roughly $17,000 per child. To send that same child to Bishop McDevitt's only $6,000, and that's only the state contribution or the state subsidy that will follow that child to that failing school.
You know, one of the problems, Joe, over the years is that there have been so many mandates, you know, piled onto public schools that the costs that are driven by the mandates that state government puts on school districts has to in part account for, you know, the costliness of education in some schools. Am I right or wrong about that?
You are right, and that's one of the reasons that I am continually amazed that anybody in private or parochial education would willingly ask for the state's involvement in their enterprise.
Do you think, you raised a great point. Do you think if Otto has his way and school choice were to come, do you think that would lead, if they're going to private schools, more oversight and direction by state government over private schools?
I'm asking for it right now. I'm saying there is not accountability. That accountability would require state oversight.
Yeah.
So yes, directly. This is what Roger Williams fought to establish in Rhode Island, and I am not sure. you know, he did it because he was a church person and did not want the state involved in his church. Now we've got kind of the opposite.
All right, now, go ahead, finish your thought.
No, one point, and it was Otto's first point, and I need to rebut it, and that is the idea of the choice being the parents, because in the legislation as proposed so far, the choice is the schools. The private or the parochial schools, or in many cases the public schools, because it is not guaranteed that a parent who wants their child to have a voucher.
So unlike a public school that has to take a kid, let's say, the private schools would not. You wanted to jump in.
That's not necessarily true, because there are many public schools, for example, magnet schools, that also have admission requirements and criteria as well. So they're not forced to take many of these students. And with regard to the cost, that is, or the hardship that may come to the public schools. You know, in Milwaukee, that is one of the longest standing voucher programs. Milwaukee, the state saved over $37 million in fiscal year 09. They saved 47 in 10 and 52 million in 11 just by enacting a voucher program. So we're looking at not only a savings, but we're also looking at a way, again, to empower families and to empower children and to stabilize our local communities through education.
Joe, as we draw an end to our time together, let me ask you this question. You said that you thought that a voucher bill would not pass. And I'm going to ask you both the same question. What's your sense about the hybrid that's out there, or the modified version? Do you think a pilot program would be more enticing?
I don't think it's the virtue or the failings of the legislation. I think it is the financial situation of the state more than anything else.
That will stop it from being passed.
There will continue to be X number of legislators, particularly members of the House, and many from rural areas, who will not vote for a voucher bill as long as it has financial implications for the state, and as long as public education is being underfunded.
Same. What's your sense about
I think the current economic climate is one that will create the need for vouchers. You know, as a result, many schools are forced to consolidate as a result of lack of resources. I believe that, you know, the legislature will look at this issue more closely, and I think many of our representatives will feel more confident in if there is a sunset provision placed within the language of the voucher bill. And I think that many school districts would welcome the opportunity to compete.
All right, I'm going to put you both on the spot. The governor will make his address on Tuesday, the budget address. I'm going to ask both of you, I'll start with you, with Otto, do you foresee the same kind of draconian recommendation for cuts that we saw, 15% in basic ed, 50% for the state-owned and state-related schools? Do you have any sense yet about what the education budget will look like?
I really don't have any sense yet, but I'm confident that the public schools have contacted, they have a very active lobby, and the governor is well aware of the situation.
So you don't
I'm certain that he'll support
like we saw last year?
No, I don't.
Joe, final word, Joe.
I think we're going to see level funding, and I think we're just going to see a slowing down of at least the private efforts to profitize kids.
Yep. I'll tell you what, great discussion. We'll get you back if this piece of legislation percolates a little bit more. All right, our Gene Barr is here. We're going to get an update on a couple of important issues that affects the business community, and if it affects the business community, guess what? It ultimately affects the consumer. We'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education, 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Joining me as often is the case is Gene Barr. Gene came in and said that I'm wrong about the governor's budget address. It is not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. What do I know? I'm just the host. All right. See, you already did some good here, Gene.
Oh, a little bit. We like to contribute here.
There you go. All right, let's talk a little bit about some activity on this so-called Delaware loophole. I'm not supposed to say
to use that word.
So
That's
why?
right.
What is it that's at issue here that folks in our state ought to care about?
Well, first, there's a couple things. Over the years, companies, as any company would, any individual would, seeks to minimize what your tax liability is. One way that certain companies over the years have done that is using what's called a passive investment company located in Delaware, Nevada, et cetera. In reality, that utilization has gone down in recent years. It's just not as attractive anymore. However, there are still some folks who want to address the situation of those companies, and to the extent that we can identify abuses of the system, we're willing to do that. So there's a new proposal. Unfortunately, Governor...
Now, does that mean, hold on, when
Go
you
ahead.
say, does that mean that companies will open a shop, quote, end quote, in Delaware, but they're really not doing anything there? They're just doing it so they don't have to pay?
Well, they use it, yeah, they use it to hold certain intangible property, let's say.
Okay.
And it's legal. Let's
Oh,
put
yeah,
that
we're
out
not
there. It's
suggesting
legal.
it's not
right.
legal, yeah.
So, but we've always said for things that clearly are abuses of the system, we're willing to take them on. For 8 years, Governor Rendell wanted to do something called combined reporting, which actually penalized companies that didn't even have utilization of a Delaware holding company. What they're discussing now is a much more limited approach to it, and we're taking a look at it because what they'd like to do is address that situation, go after some of these dollars that they believe they're owed, while at the same time reducing Pennsylvania's corporate net income tax rate, which is effectively the highest in the United States.
So let me get this straight. Let's say you set up one of these passive operations in Delaware. What kind of savings, tax savings, would a company, I mean, just so our
It's really hard to
folks
tell because, one, it's an individualized by company, and it has to come down to the calculation of your corporate taxes. And again, based on what we're hearing from tax practitioners, the utilization of this is down significantly. So our view is, are you really,
not as big
what
a
are you
problem.
really chasing it? Yeah,
It's
what are
not
you
as
really
big-
chasing
okay.
here? Exactly.
Yeah, and would that purpose of that be to avoid Pennsylvania's corporate net income tax? Is that what that does?
As anybody would, as we said, as anybody would looking to minimize taxes, given that we're at 9.99, effectively 10%.
Right.
People would be foolish not to utilize legal measures to reduce your tax liability.
Okay, and so you think that there's something likely to happen this spring or soon?
It could. I mean, there are some Republicans and Democrats in the House that have proposed, as I mentioned, bringing down certain rates, adjusting certain other things called net operating losses and how you calculate your taxes on property and payroll in exchange for changing and trying to address this Delaware holding issue.
I mean, how big an issue is this to the business community in general, would you say?
Well, part of it is we have to see exactly what the language says. Part of the concern we have is that, one, we think that in many ways the Department of Revenue has a lot of the power to go after these companies now, and they have in the past. So we're concerned about a proposal that would give maybe a Department of Revenue in the future powers that in our view would be punitive, in which they could go after companies that we believe really aren't doing any abuses.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, as you know, there's this huge debate nationally about extending unemployment compensation. In fact, Senator Casey from our state has been heavily involved in that. There's also a state issue involved in unemployment compensation that Gene will weigh in on following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back. We're talking with Gene Barr. Okay, we're going to continue this business analysis of things that are important to Pennsylvanians. And there's, I mean, we've got this national debate going on, and then we have also the state involvement in unemployment. Ferret that out for us.
Well,
go ahead.
Obviously, you got a situation where we have had a long-standing economic decline, and we're really we're still staggering, trying to get our way out of it. There's been some improvement here in Pennsylvania. We've done well in certain sectors, natural gas drilling being one, certain others. But part of that is that we still have nationwide an unemployment problem. The length of that unemployment problem has created a few different things. One, we now have about a $4 billion debt here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. We owe the Fed.
We owe the federal government.
That's what I thought.
Because right now, people can get up to 99 weeks of unemployment comp. The first 26 is paid by the state UC Trust Fund. The rest of that's paid out of the federal trust fund. But of course, employers fund both of those funds.
Sure, money, that's right, out of
Exactly.
payroll, yeah.
So we got 26 weeks. They've extended it up to 99 now. So now there's another debate here to keep that 99, to renew that extra extension up to 99 weeks. Of course, those things cost money. Our view is we ought to look at the unemployment situation comprehensively. That is, what else do we need to do to revise what we would call certain abuses in the system?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So does Pennsylvania, if the federal government, you know, they want to extend it, is it another 6 weeks or
Yeah.
7 weeks?
Right, up to 99
would
total.
Would that come back to Pennsylvania? Would Pennsylvania, or would that come out of the federal?
Well, it's Pennsylvania employers who pay both. So one way or another, whether it's coming out of the right pocket or the left pocket, employers are paying these dollars.
Is your position then, the Chamber's position, that you shouldn't extend it, or the government ought to pay for it if they want to do this?
It's a really good question. Our position is that we're not opposed to the extension, but we need to comprehensively solve abuses in the system. For example, the Obama administration about 18 months ago identified about $377 million a year lost in Pennsylvania's unemployment compensation system due to fraud, waste, and overpayment.
And didn't Jack Wagner, the Auditor
He saw some
General,
of the same.
I'm sorry?
He saw some of the same. He admitted that that's true. You have situations where in Pennsylvania you can collect a severance as well as unemployment comp, which led to the situation, as you know, in the city of Philadelphia, where they gave a $750 million severance package to the departing superintendent, and then she went out and collected unemployment comp. That's not right. We have people who voluntarily leave their jobs or perhaps commit some kind of willful misconduct. They get unemployment comp. We need to resolve these issues as we move forward, because it's not fair to people who truly deserve it.
Yeah, so your point is the people who truly deserve it ought to get it. But, well, that's like this discussion we've had over the years about Medicaid fraud, which we know is extensive and costing billions of dollars. Sometimes it's so difficult to root it out, it almost costs you more to root it out.
Well, sometimes it does, but we have to go after that. I mean, we have to go after the system because Pennsylvania pays more money for unemployment comp benefits than any state except California, and we don't have the second worst unemployment rate. So we know there are abuses in there. The Obama administration even has actually validated that. You mentioned the Auditor General has done something comparable. Our view is let's address the situation comprehensively so that the unemployment comp safety net is there for everybody who truly deserves it.
All right, well, look, I want to thank you coming in for this update. We'll have to get the all-star panel hopping. We'll wait till the governor comes back and they're doing the budget. Hey, thanks for watching this edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.